Okay, so I have set up stops left and right. I have made some marks here on the top, and what you can't see is I've laid up the mark that I made to the right. That goes to the right side of the bit. By doing so, I can assemble this stop here. I've done the same operation on the left-hand side, making sure that I'm going to now the opposite side of the bit. So the left side of the bit will engage the right stop, the right side of the bit will engage the left stop. That way I can make this thing centered. If I'm going all the way through, this becomes a very simple operation of setting up this stop, going all the way through, flipping this thing around, still referencing here, going all the way through. So what you'll find with the router table is that you're going to have a couple of problems with the cutting of this operation. So the rotation of this bit, as I'm looking at it here, is going to be counterclockwise. And what that means is I'm going to need both stops to align to start the cut so that it's symmetrical. But because I'm rotating in this orientation, as I start with the bit rotating, all of the force is going to be to my right until I am halfway through the cut, and then that bit is starting to push to the left. So it's very easy as you're cutting over this bit to have it kind of wander laterally. You're never going to get straight through unless you're incredibly strong, and most of you I'm sure are, but also thinking about where you need to be strong when, and that becomes the challenge. So I'm leaving these in place as my references, so I know that I'll make these symmetrical. Not so much for the first cut, not so much left to right, because if this is a little bit different, this orientation to this orientation, not the end of the world. I can make up for it when I'm fitting the drawer with those little runners or rails. But what I want to do is make sure that I can find the exact same location for this cut on both this one, and then when I switch the bits, I need to be able to find this exact same position right in the center. Same deal over here. So what I want to do is have a third stop. This will get clamped in on this position. This takes away all of the strength and all of the thinking that I was talking about for where I need to hold, because this board is now captured, and I'll be able to slide this partially way through and then come back, take this thing off, slide it to the other side, and then hold the board through that second cut. I really can't overemphasize the importance of having two stops the whole time, but it requires 3 different stops for doing these things repeatably. Center one moves, these guys do not. Okay, let me just check on how I'm doing on battery. Okay, great. So I've already set the height of the bit, I've already set the position of the cut, so I'm in good shape there. I know I don't want to go all the way through, and so that introduces another question mark. So I need to think about, with the board safely out of the way, where I want to stop the cut. And usually I want to stop about 1 inch away from the apex, or the outer rotation of this bit, to what's going to be the top edge of this material. So let's just say that's about 1 inch. I don't really care how much material is there, as long as I've gone through the majority of this drawer front. So let's say this is how I want it to go. There's a couple ways I can do this to make sure that I'm stopping at the same position on the right hand side of the drawer, and when I slide over, the left hand. I've seen a lot of woodworkers, they'll use a pencil, they'll make a little mark on the back side of their sled, so they're pushing, looking back here until they see that mark, and then they'll pull it back, and then they'll be able to repeat that, and that's not bad. I don't love it. I think that there is maybe a smarter way to go about repeating your cuts, and so that's what I want to introduce to you. So I've created these little stops. This is something that woodworkers been doing forever. What I want to do is set this up on the back of the sled, and I'm going to do it on both sides of the router table, just because There's not a lot of material into the rails here, so I want to make sure that I have stops left and right. This material is important to be the same thickness as whatever your sled is, or thinner. If I were to have this 3/4 inch board doing the same work, you can see that if I had a longer board, this will interfere with that stop and I'll start to raise this up a little bit. So I just have these things ready to go, and I can clamp them where I need them. So I'll clamp these two guys down, and then I'm ready to go. What I want to do is not have this pressing against the edges here, because now I'm fighting the rails of the router table as well as fighting the friction of these sides. So the stop is where I want it. I just want to leave a little bit of a gap here and here. As I push forward, it's going to engage in those stops. I can't advance any further forward. Then I'll pull it back, switch it over, same position of the stop, pull it back, switching out the bit. Everything's going to be the same. So let me put in some clamps here, and then I'll show you what the cut looks like.